ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
This is a prayer to Mother Kali, who is ever blissful, ever enchanting, singing, dancing, clapping in her own rhythm. O Mother, even when the universe was not there, where did you find the garland of human heads? You are instrumental for everything. We exist with your will. You are responsible for creation, destruction, and preservation. Beyond all religion, says devotee poet Kamalakanta Chakrabarti. Shadanande mohi kale mohakale mohini shadanande mohi kale mohakale mohini shadanande mohi kale apni nacho apni gao ma apni nacho apni gao ma apni gao ma koro tali shadananda mohi kale mohakale mon mohini shadananda mohi kale adibhuta sanatani shunorupa shoshe bhali adibhuta sanatani shunorupa shoshe bhali brahmano jelo na যখন ব্রহ্মাণ্ড ছিল না যখন মুন্ডমালা কোথায় পেলি সদানন্দ মহি কালে মহাকালে মনমোহিনী সদানন্দ মহি কালে সবে মাত্র তুমি যন্ত্রে আমরা তোমার তন্ত্রে চলি সবে মাত্র তুমি যন্ত্রে আমরা তোমার তন্ত্রে চলি যেমনি নাচাও তেমনি নাচি যেমনি নাচাও তেমনি নাচি যেমনি বলাও তেমনি বলি সদানন্দ মহি কালে মহাকালে মনমোহিনী সদানন্দ মহি কালে অশান্ত কমলাকান্ত দিয়ে বলে গালাগালি অশান্ত কমলাকান্ত দিয়ে বলে গালাগালি সর্বনাশী ধরে ওষি সর্বনাশী ধরে ওষি ধর্ম ধর্ম দুটো খেলি সদানন্দ মহি
I'm reading from the book Go Forward, Letters of Swami Premeshananda. This particular letter was written to Swami Swahananda from Behrampur on July 14, 1940. Swami Premeshananda writes, "Physically, I am feeling very poorly. There is no specific illness, only weakness due to old age. I thought that I would write to you after I felt a little better. That is why I am late. Stay in the hostel with a little comfort and pursue your studies free from worry. It is good to adjust oneself to all conditions. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, do what is proper according to time, place, and company. You cannot function in this world if you have strong likes and dislikes. Nothing can be accomplished by the opinionated people of our country. The main reason for this is their strong likes and dislikes. To feel oneself greater than all other people is a sign of madness. If one gives proper respect to another's individuality, no one will restrict his own individuality either. We should mix with everyone, knowing that we are all as God has made us. But at the same time, we must maintain and nurture our own uniqueness as well. I am writing this since I know that you are living in the hostel with God in various forms. It is not possible to fully comprehend what a strange place this world is, or what kind of entity a university is, unless one lives in a hostel. Revered Abhedanandaji has written an excellent book, The Religion of the 20th Century. Read it carefully. The book was written for very advanced people. It will be good if you read it. The book is quite small but extremely substantial. The main teaching of Thakur and Swamiji is go forward. No matter what stage you are at, you will be happy if you go forward. This is the basis of the Hindu religion. Swamiji said, what you are doing is all right, but better things lie ahead. Man is not moving from falsehood to truth, but from lesser truth to greater truth. It is not that you destroy something to build something new. Rather, whatever you have built, make it perfect. Whatever you want to do, do well. The robber still steals inspired by love. Swamiji's Veeravani. By gradually making yourself better and more complete, you will ultimately become perfect. This begins with cleansing the body and mind, making them bright, and ends in transcending the same body and mind. If you purify your body and mind and make them luminous, that brightness will be reflected in your face. Then you will understand, I am neither the body nor the mind. Before that, you will not believe that you are something other than this body and mind. It is only for the sake of cleansing the heart that we have so many practices and preparations. Purifying the heart is the primary duty in life. When the heart becomes pure, knowledge manifests itself spontaneously. All the religions which belittle humanity and teach the unreality of the present state of man, though trying to help mankind do more harm than good. How can one who dwells in falsehood reach the truth? What ground does he have to stand on? How can a worthless sinner whose heart is empty understand the idea of becoming good? One cannot gain something which he has never had. If I have never had any money, I won't even think about money. I won't see any need for it. Will I have any desire to eat something I have never tasted? We desire to know about only those things which we already know a little about. Those who do not accept this truth, that is to say, do not understand it, imagine God to be completely separate from themselves and believe that God will give them what they do not have. That is why they are constantly striking their heads against the ground, bowing down to God. But it is difficult to bow down with full faith before a God who is so callous and indifferent to the sorrows of this world. No one believes that he listens to our prayers. That is why you see even priests have their own priests and teachers, having their own teachers. Everyone has to have an agent in order to know him. Swamiji has laid the foundation for human life on truth. We are going from truth to truth. He has saved humanity by rescuing the Vedas. Our duty now is to make it possible for all people in all countries to learn this truth. Nag Mahashaya saw that God himself has become all living beings, and that it is he who is doing even the wicked things of the world. In that case, how do we dare to say with such conviction that this world is full of sin and stricken with injustice and imperfections? He is having his fun, playing the part of thieves and robbers. What else can we say? If looking at things from this standpoint you mix with people and do what you feel to be right, then there is no possibility of clashing with others. The mind will never become agitated, and everything can be done calmly, just as Sri Krishna calmly sat unarmed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Give your news in details. Let me know how you are doing, what food you are eating, what games you are playing, etc. Here is the reading.
Good morning. The Swami Premishananda is a very, very deep individual. You know that from his music, and you know that from his letters also in these two volumes. So when this reading actually has a lot of good ideas, a lot of deep, important ideas for our practice. So, but don't just read these and try to take notes and study them, because then you'll remember. So this is the last in this series of talks, and we will be back this week, I think, right?
Today.
Today, oh, excellent. So last time we were discussing a little bit about spiritual experience, and we pointed out that there are many, many kinds of experiences. Am I talking loudly enough? There are many, many different kinds of experiences. And as the mind is being purified through our own practice, our prayers, our disciplines, we start getting many experiences. First thing is we learn more about ourselves. That's the first important experience. We find our mind becomes sharper. Generally, we feel more together. There seems to be some integration happening. Our memory may become sharper. Those are the kind of simple experiences. Then there are also things that we may call psychic experiences. They do happen because we don't know all the powers of the mind, and as the mind becomes more concentrated and purified, it starts manifesting those experiences that people call psychic, but actually they're quite normal. For example, you may be able to hear at a distance, or you may be able to, unfortunately, read other people's thoughts. Not a good thing to be able to do. So there are some experiences of that kind. They come and they go. There may be even mystical experiences. You may get visions. You may see or hear things. You may see a form of a god. These things can also happen. You may just see light unarticulated in any form. But the point is, all of these are to be treated as in this reading that we had. They're jewels on the way, but not the goal. So you have to go forward. So these things will be experienced. This is the testimony of countless people who have practiced the yoga disciplines. It's quite interesting at first. Patanjali even tells us that a little bit of this experience gives you more enthusiasm, that this is not theory, this is real. This is something real is happening inside. And so that's good. To the extent they give you enthusiasm and encouragement to go on, that's good. But it's not the goal, and there are bigger things beyond that. So go forward. This Sri Ramakrishna taught, and Swami Premishananda says it's one of the fundamental teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. So our goal is spiritual experience. That means experience of the spirit. Spirit, you remember, we defined as in a negative way, that is not the body and it's not the mind. And that Vedanta has the basic philosophical premise. There exists something which is not body or mind. Moreover, it says we are that. So as again in the reading we heard, it's not that you have to become something that you're not, you are that, and you want to discover that. So the spiritual experience that we're looking for is realization. I realize who I am, or what I am. But beyond the initial practices that we've discovered, the main instrument is the mind. So the mind is the one that we have to pay most attention to. And we saw that these disciplines that directly lead to experience were classified into three: concentration, continuation, culmination. Dharana, jhana, samadhi. And there's a lot of discussion about how to concentrate the mind, what happens when you concentrate the mind, and what we mean by culmination and samadhi. So, but again, the philosophical foundation for this is the claim that Vedanta and yoga makes, that there is a state of the mind beyond deep sleep, dream, and waking. So we are familiar with those three, especially dream and waking states we're familiar with. Deep sleep we are inferentially aware of. We had sleep. We don't know exactly what happened at that time, but I know I had a good rest, so I infer that I had deep sleep. So these are three that we're familiar with, but Vedanta claims there is a fourth state, which we may call superconsciousness or transcendence, turiya. And this transcendent state is what we are seeking when we talk about spiritual experience. Though it's sometimes described as a state of the mind, it is actually beyond mind. It is a transcendence of the mind. In the Mandukya Upanishad, there is beautiful, several Upanishads, there are good descriptions of the state of mind, but especially in Mandukya Upanishad, there is a verse which is really, really beautiful. That's actually one of the most beautiful of the Upanishads. It comes also with Gaudapada's Karika. Gaudapada was the teacher of Shankaracharya. And in some sense, I view him as the first spiritual philosopher. Philosopher because a philosopher is trying to put knowledge into some kind of order, some kind of structure, some system. And spiritual philosopher because philosophy as we normally know it is predicated on the limit of reason. It's all based on reason. But a spiritual philosopher takes as fundamental the existence of spirit. So from that you try to deduce your entire system, your whole this business about what is life, what is the individual, what is nature, what is ultimate reality, all based on the hypothesis that spirit exists. So Gaudapada's philosophy is like that. Moreover, Gaudapada was, I think, the first to try to take Upanishads not as scriptural authority, but as to say that they are actually giving you the basis for a rational philosophy. So this is, in other words, it's not just to quote the scripture. The scripture said it, so it's true. The Upanishad said it, so it's true. But to try to argue it from pre and post and try to build a system on it. You can see how Shankara is also of that style. So the Mandukya Upanishad is really beautiful from that point of view. The Upanishad itself is short, but Gaudapada's Karika gives you quite an elaborate explanation. But anyway, in this verse that I'm talking about, if you want to look it up later, it's verse 7 in Mandukya Upanishad. It talks about the superconscious state. What is it? He describes it. Listen to this. He says, it is not consciousness of the internal world. It is not consciousness of the external world. It is not consciousness. It is not unconsciousness. It is unseen. It is beyond empiricism. Empiricism, is the idea that what happened in the past will continue to happen. If this A followed B, then in the past, then it will continue to follow. It's beyond empiricism. It's indescribable. It's unthinkable. That means it's beyond the mind. It's uninferable, meaning it's beyond reason. Beyond the grasp of the organs of action. In other words, your arms and your limbs can't understand it. It's even beyond the grasp of the organs of knowledge. Your eyes can't understand it, your ears can't understand it. Its valid proof is only in experience. All phenomena cease. It is Shantam, Shivam, Advaitam. Peaceful, auspicious, non-dual. Sa Atma, that is the self. Sa Vigneyaha, experience it, know it. So that is how the Mandukya Upanishad describes that state of transcendence. It is beyond. And so to get there, that's our goal. Now to do it, we said there are these practices. You start by concentration. Concentration means hold the mind to a point, a spatial point. Then if you're able to maintain that concentration, it becomes continuation. And then if you're able to maintain that continuation, something magical happens. It is not something that cause, but it's called transcendence. That transcendence happens, that's called samadhi. But to get to that point, you see, there's a how this practice happens. To get to that point, you have to be at it. You can't say that I'll do a little bit today, then tomorrow I'll continue, then tomorrow I'll continue. It's like trying to heat water to make tea. I'll heat it a little bit today, then tomorrow I'll continue heating it. Problem is, tomorrow it would have cooled down again. I have to start again. Or if an airplane is trying to take off the runway, it goes a little distance, let's stop here, let's take a break. Then you have to basically start from scratch again. So to get that state of transcendence, that's why it comes as concentration, continuation, culmination, that has to be taken together. So you have to be at it, and that's if there's anything that we might describe as difficult in this, that's the point. It has a continuous process that you have to be at it. On top of that, you have no guarantee of when or how that transcendence will take place. That it will take place is highly probable. That's what the Vedantic philosophy tells us. It's highly probable, but when and how it happens, you can't say. There is no law. If there were a law, then that experience would be within the realm of causation. And what we're trying to reach is something which goes beyond causation. So that's the thing. We have to be at it. Now, last time we heard a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful poem of Swami Vivekananda on this whole experience, this samadhi. It is really one that you see, these are difficult experiences to even describe, even for those who have experienced it, what to speak of those who are talking about it from second hand. So therefore, when you hear somebody who has experienced it try to say it, you have to study those words really carefully. So I'm going to go back again to this hymn of Samadhi. Let's listen to the way the mind is progressing as he's talking. He says that, and the point to especially pay attention to is the state of the ego during this process, the state of I, what is happening to it. Okay, so he says, lo, the sun is not, nor the comely moon, all light extinct in the great void of space, floats shadow-like the image universe. So where is he now? He's decided he's going to sit for meditation. Okay, he's closed his eyes. The sun nor the comely moon, he's not actually seeing it. All light extinct. You darken the room a little bit. Be careful not to fall asleep. That's what happens. They say meditation and falling asleep are very similar. Both are transcendental in a way. You see, if you say you want to fall asleep, you make the preparations for it, and then you wait for it to happen. If you try to fall asleep, you won't. I've got to fall asleep. I've got to fall asleep. Then you'll be awakened more and more. But a strange thing happens. You do fall asleep. And we know the sort of conditions by which that's likely. One thing for listening to a boring lecture is one of the ways of falling asleep. But we know the conditions, but we don't actually know, we don't cause it in some way. But this thing is similar in that sense, that you know the conditions, you prepare the mind, and then make it likely for transcendence to happen. So here, all that's happened so far in this first verse is he's closed his eyes. In other words, denied the external sensory perceptions. What happens? It floats, the image universe floats shadow-like. Why? The memory. Images are still in my mind. We all our common experience. When we sit for meditation, all sorts of images come to mind. Who I saw today, who I talked to, not only images, sounds, everything comes. It floats shadow-like, the image universe. So this is a withdrawal from the external world into the mind. And you still have thoughts of things and people. They're still in your mind. Now what happens? In the void of mind involute means turned in. In the void of mind involute, there floats the fleeting universe. Why fleeting? It's floating because it's coming and going. The mind stuff is compared to a lake or an ocean. Thoughts arise and subside. The universe is coming and going, not the universe all at once, but the things that we associate with the universe. But the fleeting universe, why fleeting? Because by this stage you have already practiced pratyahara, one of the first disciplines. You know to let go of thoughts. So the thought comes, you don't pay attention to it, it goes. Another thought comes, you don't pay attention to it, it goes. So in this sense, it's fleeting universe, rises and floats, sinks again. This is exactly what happens in practice. The fleeting universe rises and floats, sinks again, ceaseless. What holds that pattern together? I. In the current, I. I'm watching this. And if by chance I get attached to a thought or interested in thought, it's because I identify my connection with that thought. As long as I don't encourage or establish the connection with the thought has to sink. So there's the current I. Slowly, the shadow multitude entered the primal womb and flowed ceaseless. The shadow multitude means the thoughts. These are shadows of real things, the thoughts. Entered the primal womb. Primal womb is the chitta, the mind stuff, the stuff of which where thoughts, the collection of thoughts, entered the primal womb and flowed ceaseless. You don't destroy them. At this stage, they're there. Thoughts are not destroyed, they're there. The only current, before it was, the only current was I, because I, in the sense I'm watching all this universe. Now the universe is gone. It's receded back into the mind stuff. What remains? Well, it can't be just I, because I'm not seeing anything. What remains is I'm aware of myself. So he says, I am. I am. The only current, I am. I am. He's aware of the individual existence, but not through sense identification. Normally, see now, currently we are aware that our existence relative to other things. But when you deprive yourself of all the external sensory perceptions, you silence the thoughts, you have to be aware of yourself as yourself. That's why it comes down to I am. You're aware of the individual, not through identifications, but through your consciousness, your limited consciousness. So then what happens? Lo, that's a kind of surprise or exclamation. That's transcendence. Lo, it stopped. Even that current floats no more. How he is able to say that, we don't know. But even that current floats no more. Void merged into void, beyond speech and mind. He can't express it. Whose heart understands? He rarely does. He's not dead, he's still alive, but he has no way of expressing that experience that he just had. And so you see, it's really quite beautiful the way he's described it. If you study this, even if you read this before you sit for meditation, you can understand that process and prepare your mind for it. So the point is that he's just telling it in just 3 verses. We understand because of we get stuck at the first step, but still it is possible. And as I said before, the Vedanta philosophy doesn't say realization is for some people and not for others. It says it is what all of us have to strive for and what all of us will realize. So therefore it's possible, but it's not easy. And understand, to say that it's not easy is an understatement, but it is there. Now, the issue is this, that when you, there's one big issue, and it revolves around this I. One big issue is, for that transcendence to occur, you have to take a plunge into that which is not I. And that's scary. You may feel at that point that it's death. I will be destroyed myself. There's a beautiful discussion between Sri Ramakrishna and Narendranath. He says, suppose there is a pitcher or a bowl of nectar, and you are a fly. By the way, notice this is not the only time. Many places, Sri Ramakrishna's way of teaching uses incredible imagery and imagination. It's good to have rich imagination in spiritual life, in any life, but especially in spiritual life. So he's the one who thought of Saltol, and he thinks of these other things. He says, now you're a fly. He tells Narendra, you're a fly, and here's this bowl of nectar. Where would you like to sit to enjoy the nectar? And he says, Narendra says, I'll sit at the edge and stretch out. Narendra is very precise. I'll stretch out my neck and sip from that. You see, he could have just said, I'll just sit at the edge and sip. He's telling more precisely, I'll stretch out my neck and sip this. He says, no, my boy, this is the nectar of immortality. He says, why won't you jump in? Because if I fall in, I may get killed. I may die. This is Narendranath who's saying it. What to speak of us? And he says, no, my boy, this is the nectar of immortality. You won't die if you go there. You'll have eternity. You'll experience eternity. So you have to plunge in. That plunging in is very hard. So we think somehow we will be destroyed. In some way, yes, we are destroyed. What's destroyed? The limited I is destroyed, but I discover a new I. So it's a fundamental principle here that in losing the I, we discover it in truth. But we discover it in truth in a new form. And this is also an important point about the topic that we're going to discuss today. There is an expansion of consciousness. Before, even if I think of who am I? Even if I think of myself as consciousness, there is the concept of not exactly, even if I think, yes, I realize I'm not body or mind, still that idea of consciousness is limited. Transcendence changes that. That's where the fundamental change occurs. It's expansion of consciousness. I am still aware, but I'm not a limited being. Now, the interesting thing is that you don't need to wait to have transcendental experience to have that feeling of expansion. If your sadhana is correct, if you're not making a mistake, if you're following correctly what your teacher has taught you, and you're serious about it, you'll see that all along the way. All along the way, consciousness expands. You tend to become more generous, more inclusive. These are symptoms, that you can see along the way. But here, this expansion of consciousness is cannot be compared with other things. It's very different kind of expansion. Now, in this transcendence, we say, okay, fine, I is gone in some way, but it's not. It's there in another way, namely in some expanded form. But because the old way of thinking is gone, you can ask, how is it possible that you're able to experience anything after that? If your ego is gone, really, then how is it possible? What are we talking about? For example, today we're supposed to talk about free while living. What happens after that experience? How is that possible? There's an explanation for that is partly what the yoga books say, and partly it's mystical. What the yoga books say is that there are actually 8 stages of transcendence. So even though we just spoke about transcendence as one, Patanjali actually tells you 8 different stages. And they're a little technical to get into, and I would say requires a lot of meditation to understand. I find them not easy to understand. But I'll tell you the first and the end. The first one is called Savitarka Samadhi. So Vitarka means you're still reasoning, you're still analyzing. So you get this experience, you're finding your consciousness is expanded, and you feel that you have had a transcendence, but you're still reasoning about it. What is this? What did I just experience? What happened? In Viveka Chudamani, which is an excellent book, by the way, for all of spiritual sadhana, he tells there this idea. There's a verse that says, what happened? Where did the universe go? The verse says, where did the universe go? It was here just a moment ago. I mean, the point is that there is still trying to figure out what's going on. It is a transcendence, it is a samadhi, but this is called savitarka. And then it goes through various stages, nirvitarka, sabija, nirbija, until we come to nirvikalpa. Nirvikalpa samadhi, which is considered the highest, is where everything is burnt. Even the seeds of thought are burnt. There's nothing to return to. I'm quoting here. When that experience happens, that samadhi of that state happens, there's no way of coming back. It cannot be. Everything is burnt. And yet, It does happen. It does happen only because we have the testimony of Swami Vivekananda about it. Somebody asked him, have you had that experience? He said, yes, twice. So only because of that testimony we know there is some mystical way by which it is possible. But philosophically we don't see it. If everything is burnt, there is nothing to come back to. So Sri Ramakrishna talks about it in the Kadamritam. He says that a person who has had that experience goes into something like a coma. Like a coma, and the body will last 21 days. Now whether, I remember when I first read this, I thought, it's amazing he could say that, really 21 days? And then Swami Sarvatananda told me, don't make a dogma out of it. He's telling you some number. Just leave it at that. So don't hold fast to that number. Sri Ramakrishna has some way of knowing. And then Swami told us an example that actually does seem to be right. Empirically, he has seen examples in Kankal where it has exactly like that. But don't make a dogma of it, meaning there is something going on there. So at that highest experience, we cannot hold our ordinary existence in the same way. Does that person die? You see, the point is, what is death? If you by death you mean the body falls or the mind falls, yes. But then this person's consciousness is so expanded that it's not clear what it means when we say a person has died, that they exist. Also, it is said that those who don't reach that state and nevertheless don't want to return to this state experience something in between. Okay, look, I'm quoting things from the books now. You take them with a grain of salt. I do. The cause of manifestation is always desire. There's no desire, you can't manifest. And so if you get this experience at a stage where you don't have the desire to return to life as it was known, but you don't have you're not free from desire to the extent that it is nirvikalpa samadhi, what happens? You manifest somewhere in between. So from this point of view, in Patanjali's point of view, it's this prakriti laya. There are great souls, spiritual souls, who have not completely become liberated and who live in nature in some way. He says, the yogis say, that when you are yourself practicing meditation, they will help you. And you see this sometimes in the life of Swami Brahmananda. Yeah. You see this description, what is he talking about? So I'm telling you what the book says. You shouldn't ignore it, don't put too much emphasis on it, but it is a fact there's a whole range of experience beyond our current state. And existence is possible between, there are many stages in between. What theologically people call heavens and hells, all of them exist. What we call devas, the forms of God, all of them exist. They are different stages of manifestation. So for us though, as students of Vedanta and students of Sri Ramakrishna, our goal is of course to try to get the ultimate spiritual experience. Now, it's interesting that, but what is now, today's discussion though is, having had that experience, how does one live? Now you may say, look, is this really practical to be talking about this, because we haven't quite gotten there yet. We haven't had that experience, so why do we want to talk about what happens afterwards? Because in all of this cycle, what we find is that these are not compartmentalized, cut and dried stages. Separate. I won't even think about dharana until I am perfect in ahimsa. Because ahimsa comes first, right? Ahimsa is yama. Until I perfect that, I'm not going to. That's not the way it works. You practice this and you take up these other practices, and each of these practices dovetails into the other and helps you in that. So even when we talk about the highest experience, it's also important to ask what happens afterwards and how can I use that in my spiritual practice now. So that is the reason for discussing this. First point to understand, Sri Ramakrishna said, and Holy Mother said, is there may be no external change. Okay? Holy Mother said, you don't grow two horns. It's interesting, this two horns business, you see, it used to be a representation of something weird. Not only in the Indian tradition, even in the Jewish tradition, Moses is first depicted with horns. Something strange. But so she says, you don't grow two horns. Maybe in the Hindu tradition, maybe you think you don't become Nandi. You don't grow two horns. Maybe there is no external manifestation. And Sri Ramakrishna said, what happens if somebody who has in some profession does some offense and the law puts him in jail? Okay, then he's released from jail. What does he do? He goes back to his profession. That's what he says, right, in the Kadamrita. So, like that, in this thing also, that we have that spiritual experience, what happens afterwards? Externally, you may look just the same. External circumstances may just, but there's a world of difference. In what way? Perspective. Remember, we said last time that when you have that experience, you never forget it. You never forget it. And so what happens if this transcendence creates an expansion of consciousness? You're constantly aware I'm bigger. I'm not bigger than this. I'm not in that sense, but I am everywhere. All of this is part of me. That experience, that consciousness is there. So I'm going to tell you two perspectives about this, what happens after experience. One is from Gita, and the second is from the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swamiji. And they are both valuable perspectives, and they're different. But you use them together and you get a complete picture. So in Gita, I'm going to take chapter 2, the description of the Sthita Prajna. It's given in the last 15 or 20 verses of chapter 2. Arjuna asks, what are the characteristics of a person who is established in wisdom? Sthita Prajna. Prajna means wisdom. In one of the Mahavakyas is Prajnanam Brahma. That is, that Prajna itself is Brahman. And Sthita, Sti means established, Ta means established. So what is the Sthita Prajna? Established in wisdom. So the verses, there are about, not quite 20 verses, about 17 verses, 18 verses on this. And shall I go through them or not? How are we doing for time?
Okay.
You okay?
Good.
Keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first verse is, and note the tone of these. As I'll go through them, you note the tone, okay, and then we'll come back and discuss that. First he says, when one has cast away all desires of the heart and rejoices in the heart alone, in the self alone, Atman alone. When one has cast away all the desires of the heart and rejoices in the self alone. When one has mental balance, so sadness and happiness, you're equanimous. You give up extreme affection, raga, dvesha, these things, you give those up. Bhaya, fear and anger, give those up. You're not too attached, without attachment. You don't rejoice when faced with good or become sad when faced with evil. You withdraw the senses from their objects, like a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell. And even the taste for sense objects falls away. It's not that I'm simply not interested in sense perception, sense satisfaction, sense objects. They fall away from the realized soul. Initially, though, abstinence, that is not indulging in sense satisfaction, still there may be some taste for it. But even that is gone to the person of steady wisdom. Then the Gita warns us, the senses are very powerful. They can carry away your mind and understanding, even for a wise person. But steady wisdom means to have your senses under control. Having controlled them, fix the mind on the divine. Then again, this negative psychology. If you dwell on sense objects, you will get attachment for them. From attachment comes desire. From desire comes anger, because we have so many desires, we can't satisfy them, we feel frustrated. So from desire comes anger. From anger comes confusion. People who are angry, they're confused. They say the wrong things, they understand incorrectly. Confusion. From confusion, loss of memory. we forget the things we stand for. When people get really angry and confused, they say and do things, later on they themselves regret. Loss of memory. And from loss of memory, there's a failure of our intelligence. And from the failure of intelligence, we perish. Interesting, Gita is sticking this right in the middle of describing what is a man of steady wisdom. Okay, we'll come back to this, but he gives this two very important verses. But the disciplined person moves among sense objects with their senses under control, free from raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes, and they attain peace. Peace here is prasadam. Next time we have prasad, remember that's what it means. Peace. This peace destroys all dukkam, is misery or unhappiness, and the intellect of the tranquil person, the peaceful person, is firmly established in the self. For those who don't practice control, there is no understanding. There is no correct feeling either, correct meditation. There is no peace and no happiness. The wind carries away a ship on water. Similarly, the mind that gives way to senses gets carried away. It carries away the pragnam, the wisdom. Therefore, one who controls his senses at all times is established in prajna, wisdom. To such a person, that which is night to all beings is day to that person. And what is day to that person is night to all. Meaning that the things that that person is awakened to are simply invisible to others. And the things that engage others is invisible to the realized soul. As rivers flow into the ocean, but the ocean stays calm, so desires flow into the mind of the enlightened person, the sage, but he remains undisturbed and doesn't run after them. Therefore, attain peace by giving up longing, desires, and ego. And this is what it means to have your being in Brahman. Okay? This is Gita. 17 important verses, 18 important verses. Study them again and again. But what do you notice in them? There's a theme there. One, control your senses. And B, there's danger if you don't. Important message, but it has a negative tone. The Gita's point of view here in this particular very important section is negative in approach, and it's all about controlling the senses. Now, in other places, such as chapter 12, the Gita does express itself in a positive way, but here it is saying in a very negative way. Now, we don't underestimate the Gita. Gita is a fundamental book that you can get lots of wisdom from. We don't underestimate it, partly because it makes sense to us, and partly because great people like Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji, and Holy Mother have praised it. Sri Ramakrishna, said the essence of the Gita is to learn about detachment. And Swami Vivekananda said that if you have only two books to take with you where you go, take Gita and Vivekachudamani. At that time, Kadamritam didn't exist, and complete works didn't exist either. So nowadays we would have said also that. But he says Gita and Vivekachudamani. So we don't underestimate the power of the Gita or what it says. However, now that we have Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swamiji, there's a more positive way of saying the same thing. And the positive way has a good thing because it's all not about saying don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but what you should do, what you can do, even now. When we talk about, we want to know what happens after this experience. Well, we have some three fantastic examples. Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, look at their life. I said before that you go, maybe no external thing changes. Sri Ramakrishna lived his life teaching whoever he wanted to come, but not as a formal teacher, but he just continued his life. He lived in the temple of the Kali, and he continued to speak about spiritual truths to whoever came. You didn't see any horns coming out of him. And then, and moreover, he didn't. People came to him and he taught. He didn't go out seeking people. Swami Vivekananda, a very articulate, intellectual-minded person, he became a world teacher. He continued to do what he was doing. He was philosophically minded from the beginning. He could debate, he could argue. Sri Ramakrishna even encouraged it, and he continued to do that. And Holy Mother, she continued to live in a household. She told clearly, I wear the white cloth. She didn't become a nun. She didn't become, even, by the way, neither did Sri Ramakrishna. He didn't wear an ochre cloth either. So the point is, the externals may not change, and we see it directly in their lives. Where and how you are, you stay, but your world is transformed, and you can transform the world around you and the people around you. So the positive way of saying what the Gita says is, yes, you need control, yes, detachment, yes, renunciation. But Sri Ramakrishna's way of saying that is, become attached to something higher. You see, embrace something higher. The way you get detachment, the way you get renunciation, is to get something higher. And he told many examples of this. One excellent example is about when Hari Maharaj, Swami Suryananda, asked him, how do you control the mind, when mind will run after sense gratifications. And what did he say? He didn't say, no, you have to control the mind. He said, turn the course of the mind. Turn the course of the mind. Mind is going to run. Make it run in another direction. Because it will, after all, it will take what you feed it. Therefore, make it run in another direction. And so his point was always try to experience or practice in a positive way. Now I will tell you this very important two verses which are the most negative in the Gita Sthita Prajna sequence, how you can turn them into very powerful, positive verses. This one about if you dwell on sense objects, you get attachment to them. From attachment comes desire. From desire comes anger. From anger comes confusion. Confusion, loss of memory. Loss of memory, failure of intelligence. Failure of intelligence perishes. You see, what is the actual verse? I'm forgetting the actual verse now. Okay, but anyway, if dwelling on sense objects produces attachment, it's a fact. But wait a second now. I can actually change that a little bit. Get rid of the sense objects. It's a law of the mind. Whatever you dwell on, you develop attachment. Just a law of the mind. And Sri Ramakrishna said this, whatever you dip your mind is like a cloth. Whatever you dip it into, that's the color it takes. So then, okay, fine, I understand. I'm not going to dwell on sense objects. Maybe I'll dwell on my spiritual ideal. I'm going to dwell on my spiritual ideal. How? I'll read, I'll think, I'll talk, I'll sing. All of these things I'm doing, I'm going to dwell on my spiritual ideal. What happens? Attachment is going to be produced to it. But that's a good attachment. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. How do you get detached from something? Attached to something else. Turn the course of the mind. So this very Gita verse itself can be completely transformed into a positive discipline. It's a law of the mind. One of the things we didn't discuss, but many that you will discover for yourself, the mind is subject to law. It is not random. Mind, and the way we know this is because mind belongs to nature. All nature is subject to law. That's the scientist's premise. Nature is subject to law. Mind is subject to law. So you will discover the laws of the mind. And one of the things is, whatever if you put a certain thought repeatedly in the mind will start replicating that. It's sort of like some of these online things, the way they sell you, they analyze what you bought and they try to sell it to you again. Now, logically speaking, I finished buying it. Why are you selling me something I already bought? But that's the way they do it. And the mind is just like that. If you put something on the mind repeatedly, the mind will naturally give you that same thought again. That's the thought that's going to arise. That's just a law of the mind. So this is how you can practice detachment and attachment. Namely, just repeatedly put a positive thought, your spiritual ideal, in your mind. What happens is slowly you develop attachment for it. You'll miss it. If you don't think about it, you'll miss it actually. So this is Sri Ramakrishna's whole approach of how do you get detachment? Be attached to something higher. Now, So in all of these experiences, in all of these teachings, what we find is the person of realization, as I already said, experiences this expansion of consciousness, but it's not consciousness alone. But we discussed this in a previous thing. It is loving consciousness. And that again we get empirically by studying the lives of the people who have experienced this. Love is the communicable form of the divine. If you think of the nature of spirit, communication, how do you do it? You can't do it through words. You have to do it through feeling. Feeling is the only way that spiritual presence can really be communicated. So how do you know you're in the presence of some spiritual company? You feel it. It is a kind of feeling. And so love is that intensity of feeling, and that's the communicable form of the divine. You feel when you know that you're in holy company, when there's a sense of peace comes to you, and also a kind of awakening of love, generosity. When these things awaken, you know that you're in the presence of spiritual company. So that love is the communicable form of the divine. And that's why now finally Holy Mother said, what is the signs of a realized soul? How do you know somebody has had that spiritual experience, the highest? Again, she said, you don't grow two horns. Nor do you see, you may see vision, you may not see a vision. What did she say? In terms of after that, what is the sign? Person becomes unselfish, compassionate, and deeply concerned about the well-being of others. These are the signs of a realized soul. And what's not to understand in that? You see, if we think this samadhi is very esoteric state, and these sadhanas, if you read Patanjali, you'll get scared a little bit. I mean, how deeply he describes what will happen, what are the challenges. It sounds pretty difficult, but that we may or may not understand. We may or may not succeed in this life. Eventually we'll succeed. But what's not to understand about this, what happens after? That the person who has had that experience becomes compassionate, unselfish, and deeply concerned about the well-being of others. Then I can try to be like that now. I can practice that now, even without having that skill. And it won't be futile, because the thing is, it's all a closed loop that will actually help you in your other spiritual practices as well. And we see this not only in our time, of course, it's Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, but in the past, we have the story of Buddha. Buddha, after his awakening, he felt that this nirvana experience, he said, there is no point in talking about this. Nobody will understand. I'm going to just sit here and be in this state, and the body will fall. But then another thought came to him soon afterwards. It said, but wait a minute, maybe one person will understand. Or even if that one person doesn't understand, maybe somebody will understand a little bit, and it will help them to live a better life. That's worth it. So he got up that night itself, he walked to Sarnath and gave his first sermon the next day. So the point is that in Buddha's instance also, we see that awakening of love by which he wants to communicate. Then the story about the lamb, either it's a lamb or a goat. Goat? Okay, some say goat, some say lamb. Some animal was going to be sacrificed. He saw that and he said, no, look, if you think you're going to get some merit by sacrificing this animal, you'll get even more merit by sacrificing a human being. So take me. Who would give up their, it has to be incredible sense of compassion that even for this animal he could feel that I'm ready to die. Sometimes people are ready to die for big things, like country, and you think something big is happening. This is just an animal that's being taken for some sacrifice. He says, I'm ready to go. You'll get even more merit. Christ, life of Christ, see, person in such excruciating pain says, forgive them, they know not what they do. What is kind of compassion that must be? See, that love for humanity, the very people that are persecuting him. All of these are examples to show that a person of that awakened consciousness, it's not just expansion of consciousness, there is love also, that is the experience, is the communicable form of the divine. Sri Ramakrishna, himself in many stories in his life about how he had that compassion and love for people when he's going on pilgrimage. We already told, he found these poor people. He said, unless you give them the means to help themselves, some cloth, some oil, some food, I'm not going to your pilgrimage. You go and have your pilgrimage. It's a very, very amazing statement for Sri Ramakrishna to make, because you paint him in such traditional colors. You think going to pilgrimage, visiting a temple, this is what Sri Ramakrishna is about. He said, I'm not going there. There's no religion there when people here are suffering. See, that's what Swami Parameshananda also said. Sri Ramakrishna was never about denying this, the world we live in, or not in expressing that love to help the suffering of people. And the Gita, of course, says this in many places. Everywhere, this same Brahman, the same divine being, everywhere his hands, everywhere his feet. Swami Vivekananda quotes that. Therefore they take that. Swami Vivekananda took it forward and said, as a philosophy of action, therefore, serve man as the worship of God. Serve humanity as the worship of God. So it's not just about doing, this whole business of Ramakrishna Mission's idea of social service is not about doing good to people. It's worship. It's spiritual practice. It's same spiritual discipline. And it is born from the fact that in the highest experience, you feel this expansion of consciousness and universal compassion, love. That's their common experience. And Sri Ramakrishna told, again, another one of these conversations between Sri Ramakrishna and Narendra. He says, what would you like? What does it call? He says, I'd like to be absorbed in meditation. And then you see the practicality of the man never disappears. Even in that highest state, I'd like to be absorbed in meditation. Now and then come and eat something. And then go back into meditation. It says, look, Ramakrishna then scolded him and said, I thought you were like a big ship, not only to cross the ocean, but to take others across. It's not enough for you to be absorbed in meditation. You have to help others across as well. And Narendranath, in his life, his heart really grew. After his Parivrajika days, he met Swami Turiyananda. And he said, with tears, he said, Hari, I still don't know much about your God, but my heart has expanded very much. His heart has expanded very much. And then much later in life, he wrote a poem, which to a friend. And the final line of that is, he who loves and serves all beings is worshipping best his God. Let me read you some of that. It's a long poem, but there are some verses. Let me read for you. It's again this thing to be studied. These are the expressions of a person of great realization. And so study every word they say. Don't take any of his words lightly. It says, listen, friend, I will speak my heart to thee. As far as I know, this is not a translation. It was written in English. Yeah. Again, a point. You're not dependent on somebody's interpretation. This is his words. Listen, friend, I will speak my heart to thee. I have found in my life this truth supreme. Buffeted by waves in this whirl of life, there is one ferry that takes across the sea. Formulas of worship, control of breath. You see, we've studied this. We've studied japa, pranayama, formulas of worship, control of breath, science, philosophy, systems varied, relinquishment, this whole business of detachment, possession and the like. All these are but delusions of the mind. Love, that's the one thing, the sole treasure. I, born heir to the infinite thou art. Within the heart is the ocean of love. Give away. Give what away? Give that love. Express that love. Love unexpressed, constrained, becomes jealousy. Love is meant to be expressed. When you try to constrain love, it becomes polluted, it becomes jealousy. Anything when you try to limit, constrain knowledge, when you constrain knowledge, becomes vanity. These things are treasures to be distributed, to be shared, to be disseminated. Love, therefore, is not to be constrained. You show it. Give away. Whoever asks in return, his ocean dwindles down to a mere drop. From highest Brahman to the yonder worm, and to the very minutest atom, everywhere is the same God, the all love. That's how we describe Sarvam Kalvedam Brahman. But what is that God? The all love, friend of our mind, soul, body at their feet. These are his manifold forms before thee. Rejecting them, where seekest thou for God? Who loves all beings without distinction, he indeed is worshipping best his God. What happens after the highest experience? This is what happens. And then in another thing, this is to Sarachandra Chakravarti, his disciple, in conversations with a disciple. Listen to what he says. This is very interesting because it goes against tradition in a big way. What is the good of that spiritual practice or realization which does not benefit others? Does not conduce to the well-being of people sunk in ignorance and delusion? Does not help in rescuing them from the clutches of lust and wealth? Do you think so long as one jiva endures in bondage, you will have any liberation? This is what's non-traditional. Shankara will reject it, but he doesn't. Vivekananda is saying this. Do you think so long as one jiva endures in bondage, you will have any liberation? So long as he is not liberated, it may take several lifetimes, you will have to be born to help him, to make him realize Brahman. And he said himself, may I be born again and again until I help and to help the whole world to realize it is one with Brahman. Every jiva is part of yourself, which is the rationale of all work for others. It's not others, it's me. As you desire the wholehearted good of your wife and children, knowing them to be your own, so when a like amount of love and attraction for every jiva will awaken in you, then I shall know that Brahman is awakening in you. So that spiritual experience, in Swami Vivekananda's words, is not only compassion for everyone, but in fact he goes one step further and says, you will not be free until everyone is free. You can't go alone. And that is new. And right after it, the disciple Sharachandra is a scholar actually. He may come across as somebody pretty humbly listening to Swamiji. He's a scholar. He's a Sanskrit scholar. He studied Shankara too. He says, sir, this contradicts Shankara. It goes on. And then Vivekananda doesn't argue it further. He says, yes, I know it goes against the orthodox way of view, but this is my point of view. So here is the man of realization of our time telling you what happens after that experience, and therefore what the implication is for all of us who are seeking that experience, behave in that same way. And then finally, Holy Mother. What does Holy Mother say? I don't tire of repeating this, because each time I repeat it, I start thinking about it, and I think I'm understanding. I try to understand a little better, and we're apt to, when we hear it so often, to turn our minds off and think that we've understood it. But I invite you to each time to think about it afresh. If you want peace, do not find fault with others. So she doesn't start with meditation and spiritual experience. It starts with, if you want peace, do not find fault with others. And then the next one is the one that's often misquoted and misunderstood. Learn to see your own faults. She didn't say find your own faults. Don't find other people's faults. Don't find your faults either. This fault finding is bad, whether you apply to others or to yourself. Learn to see your own faults, meaning be alert. If I make a mistake, if I'm not alert, I won't even realize I made a mistake. Just be alert. Learn to see. Learn to see. Don't go looking for them. Learn to see your own faults. No one is a stranger, my child. The world is your own. Okay, everybody is part of my family. Learn to make the world your own. Now, some people, when they hear Holy Mother's thing, and Swami Vivekananda's idea of worship of God in man, this idea of service that Ramakrishna Mission has engaged in, they will say, this is not Vedanta, this is Neo-Vedanta. So if you have to if you deal with philosophers, especially in academic circles, they try to pigeonhole everything. So when you try to say, when they'll come and tell you, you see, Indian thought, spiritual thought is very, very otherworldly. Okay, it doesn't care about the well-being of people. And then when you try to point out this, you say that's not Vedanta, that's Neo Vedanta. Swami Vivekananda went to the West. Sri Ramakrishna had disciples of many devotees of many different religions. He learned those other things. He went and studied with the Christians. He learned about doing good to people. And so he's telling you this thing. This is Neo Vedanta, it's not Vedanta. That is nonsense. The first verse of the Isha Upanishad, which is one of the oldest of the Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, even Brahma Sutras, you will find these thoughts already there. That idea that the consequence of Sarvam Kalvidam Brahman. Life continues, but how do you live? Isha Upanishad says, Isha Vasham Idam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat. So what? Tena Chaktena Bunjita Magridah Kasya Sudhanam. Enjoy life. Enjoy the world even, it says. But with this awareness that the spiritual reality pervades everything. So this is not Neo Vedanta, this is Vedanta. But we have it very clearly given in focus for us by Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother and Swamiji, and that we have to be very grateful. So what happens about this being free while living, this Jivan Mukta or Bhava Mukha of Sri Ramakrishna is this, that experience conduces to a tremendous expansion of consciousness and tremendous expansion of love. And what happens after that experience? What is our life like? It is that fellow feeling, a sense of community. The world is my own. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Everybody is mine. And to behave in that way, to live in such a way, that is to be free while living. I think that is all I want to say. Do I have still time or have we finished? What's the time?
12:60.
12:16. You have to tell me 5 to 12. There's a rule. There's a rule that, you see, the problem is this is torture, really, to tell you the truth. Because you're in such a small group, everybody can see. If you fall asleep, everybody can see it. At least you should be considerate to your audience that you can sleep in anonymity. Just make the room a little dark and have it big enough. There's a rule, about sleeping in lectures. If you have to listen to a lot of lectures, you develop protocol. So the rule is you're allowed to sleep, but you can't snore. You can't snore.
You cannot sound sleep.
Yeah, you can have even a sound sleep, but I can't hear the soundness of I can't hear the soundness of your sleep. There was once a lecture in Boston. Swami Chagananda, he was giving the lecture. The topic was a beautiful topic. Wake up to spiritual life. You can see what's coming. Wake up to spiritual life. It was a very nice lecture, we were listening, but somebody fell asleep. And even worse, he started snoring. Now the acoustics of that hall were a little strange. We could hear it, but Swami couldn't hear it. So he was lecturing away, getting absorbed in his subject, and he could see a lot of people were smiling. And he got even more enthusiastic. Boy, today I'm really getting through. People seem to know what I'm saying. Resonating well, and he was going on with more energy. And then he was very happy at the end, and then somebody told him Swami was snoring. I thought it was my lecture. and how many coincidences came together that day. The topic is awakening to spiritual life. This guy snoring, and then Swami got even more enthusiastic. But anyway, there are some rules about sleeping during lectures. This is there was once in New York. Swami Adiswananda, pretty intense lecturer. He doesn't use notes. He goes on. He doesn't even. I think he goes well beyond an hour.
Yeah.
And so one person, unfortunately, he was sitting in the front row. So what happened? He fell asleep, but he fell so deeply asleep, he fell off his chair. What happened? Then, of course, he suddenly got up and he said, "Holy cow!" So the other friend, when he tells a joke or he just looks at you, gives you enough time to laugh. So that's what he did. He just looked, let everybody have a good laugh, and then he continued. So these things happen, unfortunately, but sometimes it's also good. Anyway, thank you for patiently listening. These 4 weeks have given me a chance to develop some ideas, and clearly I'm the greatest beneficiary of that. To be able to bring together ideas coherently and then put them, it helps us in spiritual life. That's why the Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad says, never refrain from these 2 practices, reflection and sharing with others, speaking to others. Swajjaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. Swajjaya means reflecting, thinking, your whole sadhana, and pravachana means to speak to others, because in that the whole knowledge becomes deeper for us. The intellectual side of things shouldn't be underestimated. Intellectual conviction is important. When you sit for meditation, you sit with the conviction that what I'm doing is not an imagination. I'm not making up things. This is the truth. This is the truth as explained by the great people of the past, and even in our lifetime people have experienced it and told us that we can do this. So with that conviction, intellectual conviction is very important, very helpful in spiritual life. Okay.